What is up, guys, and welcome back to another subsection of the Third Triumvirate podcast called Edith's Video Essays. This is where I do my little subsection of video essays. Today we're going to be covering the fall of the Roman Republic, specifically key individuals and their impact on the Republic's fall, because my opinion, in general, is that the fall of the Roman Republic was not caused by solely, this is obvious, but I put more emphasis on the role of key individuals in the fall of the Roman Republic than necessarily the instability of the Republic system itself, because I think that it's Rome's inherent culture of placing individuals on a pedestal and almost having these key figures, generals, consuls, almost ascend beyond the average man in terms of how revered they are, sort of almost like the US's founding fathers, in a way, all politicians anywhere that are considered almost godlike. Rome did this a lot, and it led to a lot of powerful men wanting to be more powerful than the last man, and especially to do with the consulships, because there was obviously 2 consuls every year, and it was called the year of that consul. And so during your consulship, if you could do something crazy and glorious, or just to kind of get remembered in the textbooks, so people remembered the year of your consulship, that was a big motivator for a lot of the actions of Roman politicians. And I genuinely think that the reason for a lot of the things that led to the fall of the Roman Republic was the actions of, one, rich, noble men who wanted to gain glory and power and didn't care about the stability of the Roman political system if it meant that they were greater than the man before them. That's just of my opinion. Just a quick recap. Obviously, Rome emerged in 753 BCE and was a monarchy up until 509 BCE, where the king Tarquinius Superbus was assassinated by Lucius Junius Brutus. Okay, remember Lucius Junius Brutus, okay? Remember how he assassinated the king, all right? Because Rome did not like kings. Rome did not want anyone. It was a big insult in Rome for someone to accuse you of wanting to be king. And also, once again, bring the beat in, back to Remus and Romulus, okay? Obviously, my boy Romulus over here, he killed my boy Remus over here because they like different hills, and Remus jumped over a fence, okay? Not on Romulus's watch, all right? So he killed Romulus, and so Rome itself, you could say, was built off of fratricide, civil war, and infighting. You could say that maybe it was an underlying culture of Rome. Obviously, the tale of Remus and Romulus is almost certainly not true. It almost certainly comes from that innate human need to come from something greater, like King Arthur, or, obviously, because they draw a lot of Troy and the legend of Aeneas, and they want to believe that they're descendants of him and stuff like that. It's very similar to a lot of foundation narratives among a lot of cultures. And I do think it comes from an innate human need to, one, that we love the magic, and two, we just want to believe we came from something greater. But Rome was almost certainly just an immigrant state. Now again to the Roman Republic. The fall of the Roman Republic, we say it happened from about 133 to 23 BCE, okay? So in 133 BCE, we enter in our first key figure, all right? Tiberius Gracchus. Tiberius Gracchus, the important part about Tiberius Gracchus is he wanted to pass a law. The Punic Wars had just ended, and he wanted to pass a law saying that oh, hey, how about we give our veteran soldiers some of the land that we confiscated in the Punic Wars? And the people in the Senate, who obviously the Senate's made out of Roman elite, were like, no, because we want that land, because we're the elite, we want the land. And we have to remember, Tiberius Gracchus was not a consul, he was a plebeian tribune. Now, if you guys remember the tribuneship of the plebs, if you've watched the previous podcast, you would know the tribuneship of the plebs was basically a office created for the people of Rome, so the poorer majority of Rome, to have a say in politics, and it was an alternate route through the cursus honorum for people who possibly weren't of nobility or just wanted to appeal to the people. But the Tribune of the Plebs had the ability to, one, they were sacrosanct, so the idea of saying that they shouldn't be a thing, that was cause for being killed. Like, you could not say anything against the Tribune of the Plebs. And two, they could overturn the decisions of the Senate. Now, the Senate, their power, they were more like an advisory board, okay? But they were like an advisory board that everyone was like really scared of. Like, it was less that they had codified legal power and more that they had cultural power, and people just didn't go against it. Like, it was just kind of taken as read that you would do what the Senate said, okay? Tiberius Gracchus was like, there isn't a commandment that says thou shalt not send, though, right? So he basically used his plebeian tribuneship to pass this bill called, I believe, the Lex Semporia Agraria. It doesn't really matter what the bill was because he just wanted to give soldiers land. Okay, whatever. All right, we love our veteran soldiers over here in Rome. The importance of it is that it got passed. And because it got passed, he surpassed the Senate, ignoring them entirely to pass a law, which was kind of unheard of at this point. Like, he got it through, and he got assassinated effectively because the people in the Senate accused him of wanting to be king, which, once again, worst insult you could possibly receive in Rome. But yeah, so he got assassinated, but the important part is that he did that, and he could do it. So that set a precedent for 10 years later, in 123 BCE, his younger brother, Gaius Gracchus, did the exact same shit, except he did some more stuff. He put in a law to be like, let's build a new city out of the ruins of Corinth, because we've destroyed Corinth. Sorry, the Barkers. He also proposed the grain dole, which was, so once again, you have to remember, he's appealing to the people of Rome. He's not appealing to the Senate. The Senate don't need the grain dole, they're rich. The grain dole would ration a certain amount of grain per Roman citizen. And the Senate don't need that, so he's obviously not appealing to the Senate, so he's appealing to the people, which, once again, normally one would appeal to the Senate, but he's appealing to the people. And he held office of the Tribune of the Plebs for 2 years, which was low-key the exact same thing his brother got assassinated for, which shows that it's actually, there is a shift. There's a shift going on. And due to his popularity, he got a crowd of loyal supporters, and sort of, they started to become, like, once the Senate decided they wanted Gaius Gracchus killed, his supporters, like, there was a bit of, like, gang violence going on. Eventually, he did die. But the grain dole remained, and also, now, what you have here, the result of the Gracchi brothers. Let me read out what I said for the importance of the Gracchi brothers. What's important about these brothers, not only do they highlight a fundamental flaw in the Roman Republican political system, but with that being the power of the Senate and the ability for the tribuneship of the plebs to simply ignore it, but they also sparked the rise in two different factions of Roman politics, the Populares and the Optimates. So, the Populares were the populists, so they appealed to the Roman people, oftentimes through the tribuneship of the plebs and the plebeian council, and they could pass legislation that way. And then you had the Optimates, people who favoured the Senate and did everything they could to appeal to the Senate. Now, this is not to say that the Senate were consistently always against everyone who was a Popularis, and the people always hated the Optimates, okay? There was multiple periods in time where Popularis was actually favoured by the Senate. But it shows that there's now two different routes of the Roman political system that have just emerged in the last 20 years, 10 years. Like, just out of these two brothers doing this. And yeah, so yeah, which also set a precedent for people, specifically blokes who wanted to climb the political system and wanted to make themselves great. They had a way to pass legislation and get what they wanted, even if it meant undermining the fundamentals of the Roman political system, because that's not what mattered to them. What mattered to them was their success. So what I'm saying is the value that Rome places on the individual that led to its downfall. That is my contention for all of this video essay. Okay. All right. Next up. Well, you know what? Let's just start with another key date, okay? Like, 119, the Jugurthine War begins. King Jugurtha, he's in Africa, all right? He's, okay? Now, we have key figure coming in, Gaius Marius, okay? This guy was a military general. He was very important in Rome. In fact, he did two things that were very, very important during his time he spent in power. So, first thing he did, he held consulship during both the conflict with the Teutones and the Cimbri and the Jugurthine War. He held consulship for 6 consecutive years, and then he would eventually leave and then come back for a 7th later on. And also, during his first year as consul, or I believe first or second year as consul, he ended up, yeah, I'm gonna assume like in his like first year of like consul or something like that, Marius put in some key military reforms to the Roman military system, because he was like, oh, I don't have enough soldiers. We don't have enough soldiers. And the Roman military was entirely voluntary. Like, if you were in the Roman military, oftentimes you were rich enough to afford armor and stuff like that. Like, the Roman military, like, wasn't like Sparta. It was very much like you needed to afford armor, you need to be able to pay your way up. And oftentimes the Roman military was used, one, as to show loyalty to the state if you're like a rich Optimates, but also because you needed to be part of the military to kind of climb the Roman political system, like in most ancient civilizations. But what Marius did was he was like, we need more soldiers. So he put in some military reforms, because obviously he's consul right now. Even if he's not in Rome, he's off somewhere else. He's in Jugurtha or he's in the Teutones and Cimbri, I can't remember. But that's not what's important. And what's important is he put in military reforms that, one, non-landowning citizens could now become members of the military, and of course people in the military got paid, so it meant that if you're an non-landowning citizen, you join the military, this is now a career for you. This is a way for you to gain social mobility. And also, because military veterans, once they retired, were often given land, it was a way for you as a non-landowning citizen to get land so that you could eventually, you know, give your land to your sons and it would keep going, you know, whatever. All right? But what he also did was made it the responsibility of the general to pay and distribute the land to the soldiers. So once the soldiers retired, the general gave them the land, and also during their serving as a soldier, the general paid them, okay? This made an insane social shift in the Roman military, because no longer was it a military made up of voluntary members who paid for their own armor and did it for loyalty to the state. It was now a much larger military. Sorry, I ran out of storage. Now it was a much larger military made out of people who were doing it for money. And not only did the loyalty shift from the state, it shifted to the general who was paying them, giving generals what was effectively armies who were only loyal to them. Once again, let's pan back to Rome's insane presence they placed on the glory of the individual. Like, men in Rome, specifically powerful men in Rome, were really, really selfish. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of them. So giving these powerful individuals effectively private fucking armies in a civilization built on fratricide, infighting, and civil war. Okay, all right, cool. So, Jugurthine War ends, all right? Whatever, okay? Marius doesn't actually end up killing the King Jugurtha or really being the cause of the end of the war. That was actually the result of a guy called Lucius Cornelius Sulla. So Sulla's going to be very important. Obviously, also Marius gained a lot of prestige during the Social War, which is when all the Latin cities who had Latin rights were like, hey, we want Roman citizenship and we want the grain dole and we're going to revolt. And this was another case of using your military and fighting back to get something that you want out of the Roman government. And so we see a theme here. Okay, now obviously they got what they wanted, the Latin cities got what they wanted. We're going to talk about Lucius Cornelius Sulla. So he gained prestige during the Social War, and he served under Marius during the Jugurthine War, and he ended up being kind of the cause of the defeat of King Jugurtha, which is very important because he kind of held this against Marius. He was kind of like, I got you got the, and Marius was like, fuck you, bro. And we have to remember, Marius is a lot older than Sulla, okay? And Sulla gets his first consulship in 88 BCE. We remember that Sulla is aligned with the Optimates faction, while Marius is aligned with the Popularis faction. Marius is an example of a Popularis who was oftentimes actually favored by the Senate because he won them a lot of wars, okay? And basically, during Sulla's consulship, he gets offered this campaign. His campaign to basically declare war on King Mithridates. I don't know Roman numerals, but it's V1, I'm assuming the 6th. Do not fact check me on that, okay? We've all got to have faults. Of Pontus. And Marius hears this and he goes, what? No, campaigning is my thing. And so he basically goes to the Senate and goes, Senate, I want the campaigner. And then the Senate gives Marius the campaign. And Sulla is livid. He's actually so livid, in fact, that he turns his ass around, walks all the way to the nearby fucking town of somewhere, my bob, calls up his veteran soldiers, like, rallies the troops, goes, come on, boys, let's go, and marches on Rome. See where the significance of Marius' political reforms plus the social war may have come into effect here? Yes, okay, so Sulla, really mad that he lost his campaign, he's salty as fuck, he marches on Rome. And he gets back his campaign because no one was expecting him to do that. No one was thinking, hey, here's an option of what Sulla might do. He's gonna march on Rome. So he does that and basically gets his campaign back and he leaves for his campaign, and for like 5 years he's out in his campaign. He first like sets up like an Optimates faction in like Rome because he's a strong believer in wanting to reinstate the power of the Senate. Like that's a big motivator for Sulla, and also he just wants his campaign. But God forbid we forget that Sulla hates Marius. Like, Marius really got under Sulla's skin. So once he gets back and he realizes the Popularis faction have actually, like, reinstated themselves as power while he was gone, and then he goes, all right, where's that bitch Marius? And they all go, ooh, he's dead now. And Sulla's like, oh, okay, fuck that bitch. Like, marches on Rome again, digs up Marius's bones and, like, chucks him somewhere. I don't know. Bit weird, mate. Maybe, I don't know, get a stress ball or something. And does this thing where he puts up lists of people called proscriptions. Does this ring a bell to anyone? If you're not in ancient history, which I'm assuming you probably are, but the proscription lists were basically lists of people who were Popularis, the Popularis faction in the Senate, who were declared enemies of the state and could be legally hunted for a bounty. There were 500 people who were killed during Sulla's dictatorship. Oh yeah, by the way, he's dictator now. He's dictator. So yeah, and he could have technically held dictatorship indefinitely. He held it for 3 years and then he stepped down because he wanted to just like restore the power of the Senate, you know. But I fear that you marching on Rome and then killing off the entire Popularis faction jarred the Roman political system so bad that any attempt to restore the Senate was long gone, babes, like the power of it. The Senate stayed, obviously, but like, I don't think it did what he meant to do, and he kind of went down in history as a horrible monster. Which fair. Prescription lists, you know, bit akin to what Trump's been doing with the whole Charlie Kirk situation. 64,000 Americans, full names and jobs on a list. Anyone know about that? I sent that to Kara and it immediately got taken down, so. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so he marches on Rome, and yeah, he just basically, he was allowed to have power unchecked, which was the first instance in Roman history where this had happened, and people like Caesar saw that and were like, why did he step down? I wouldn't have. We'll get into Caesar later. Next up, we got Pompey. Pompey the Great. Once again, we have another key military leader. Pompey was he was the brawn in Rome. And people didn't like him because he was a member of the Popularis faction, I believe. Let me check that. Basically, his early career, he rose to prominence after Sulla's death. He served in the Social War. He used his own money to help Sulla. He gained popularity with the Senate and Roman people. He got victories in Sicily and Africa, and he returned to Rome seeking a triumph. Sulla initially refused Pompey's triumph because he was too young and had not held official political positions under the cursus honorum. Sulla argued that his achievements justified the honor, and Sulla relented, and he got a triumphant march in Rome. Once again, guys, triumphal march, very like, I don't know, very individualistic, very much like, I fear that you didn't do that alone, mate. Like, I fear you did have an army. I don't know. Like, I get you did all the strategies and shit, but like, I don't know. There was a revolt in Oedipus in 78 BCE, and Oedipus, wait, no, the revolt wasn't in Oedipus. Oedipus led the revolt, and Oedipus died. So, Pompey got him. There was a war with, Sertorius. Pompey defeated them. Pompey does a bunch of he did the Spartacus' slave revolt, bro. You guys know about Spartacus? Like Gladiator? Yeah. Once again, Pompey is just getting triumph after triumph after triumph after triumph. He becomes consul in 70 BCE. He's elected consul with this guy called Crassus. Remember him. The pirate problem. See, the pirate problem, now, you just gotta, like, remember in the back of your mind that during all of this, they've got a serious pirate problem going on, especially in the Mediterranean. It's really getting annoying out there. Like, it gets to a point where, like, the second triumvirate, one of the guys was just kind of sent off to deal with the pirate problem because they didn't want him there. Because it's just like, it's constantly ongoing. You just have to, it's like when Sparta was invading Athens during the Peloponnesian Wars. You just assume they're doing it right now, okay? Like, you just have to assume that there's a noise in the background. That's the pirate problem, okay? Oh, wars in the East. Now, this is important, okay? Pompey wins a bunch of wars in the East, and he basically makes him one of Rome's, like, richest and powerful generals. Like, he's rolling in it. And he, you know, he wins this, and he's like, he gets a bunch of settlements in the East, and he is really happy with his settlements. He's really loving his settlements. He goes to the Senate, he goes, hey, thanks for all my triumphant marches, and you notice how I'm iced the fuck out, I'm actually so up right now, could you please recognize my Eastern sentiments? And the Senate are like, we're kind of scared of you, and we're really threatened by you, so no. And Pompey is like, I'm clutching my chains right now. I'm clutching my iced out chains. How dare you? And so this is a primary motivator for Pompey joining an illegal alliance. Illegal alliance in question? Well, we'll figure that out. Crassus, okay? Crassus was a very, very rich man. He was so rich, he oftentimes sponsored people to get through the cursus honorum. He served as a consul with Pompey at some point. I forget which time, when it was. 70 BCE, okay? Pompey and Crassus did not really fuck with each other, to be honest. They didn't get along. Crassus also ended up joining a very specific illegal alliance because he wanted tax breaks for all his debt collector friends. Maybe I don't like Crassus either, you know? To be fair, I don't really like anyone in these, apart from Bibulus, because God forbid we forget Bibulus. We'll get to Bibulus in a second. Sorry, I'm getting heated. Basically, yeah, he had a rivalry with Crassus, and he did not like this guy. Now let's enter in a key figure. Now, you think all these were key figures. This is the keys of key figures. Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was an up-and-comer. He wanted to be big. One day, he wanted to be on the big screen. And to do this, he was like, I want to form a political alliance. Now, basically, he formed this political alliance with Crassus and Pompey. So their roles was, Caesar was the face of the operation. He would try and be elected consul and pass legislation that both Crassus and Pompey wanted. Crassus and Pompey would ensure that he got consulship, and also just in general, Pompey wanted ratification of his eastern settlements, and he wanted a governmentship in Spain. Oh wait, no, that's the 60 agreement, sorry. He wanted land for his veteran soldiers from his eastern settlements, and Crassus wanted his tax break for his tax-lesser friends, and Caesar wanted consulship, and also he wanted command of Gaul for 5 years. He wanted military command of Gaul because he wanted to do some conquering. God forbid. God forbid a bitch conquer. Okay. The third triumvirate was formed in 60 BCE. Alright? And Caesar gets his consulship in 59 BCE. So he doesn't get the consulship of 60 BCE. He gets it in 59 BCE. And he is elected with my boy Bibulus. Now, Bibulus breaks my heart, because really, Bibulus, he wanted a friend. He wanted to be consul with Caesar. He wanted to be buddy-buddy. And Caesar was ignoring him because he's got bigger and better friends, bro. He's got big rich over here and big muscles over here, okay? And Bibulus is confused as to why Caesar literally won't fucking talk to him. Like, he keeps going, hey, Caesar, and Caesar just goes, like, doesn't talk to him, like, blanks him. And Bibulus is like, what the fuck? And so he does a bit of sleuthing, and he realizes, wait a second, I'm sensing an illegal alliance here on my eyelash. I'm sensing that Caesar might be in a legal alliance with Crassus and Pompey. And he mentions this in the Senate, and Caesar goes, you little rat. And then Bibulus goes, this is the first time you've ever spoken to me. And then, basically, Bibulus ends up getting threatened, and he spends the rest of his consulship. Let me read this in the textbook. Caesar had him physically removed from the forum. Confused and powerless to change the situation, Bibulus chose to spend the rest of his year as consul alone, hoping things would get better. I've never forgiven Caesar for that. I've never forgiven Caesar for my treatment of my boy Bibulus. But let's discuss what the importance of the first triumvirate was. The first triumvirate, while it was not a legally instated alliance, it was not legal at all, these three men effectively controlled Rome. We had the most powerful military general, the richest man in Rome, and a consul. And a lot of the time, like, this basically marks the end of the Roman Republic. There's multiple marks at the end of the Roman Republic that get more and more definite each time. In my opinion, bro, the formation of the first triumvirate, like, that's like it. It's done. It's done. But yeah, basically, those three literally controlled Rome, even if they legally weren't allowed to. Yeah. And also, the Caesar as a guy, well, actually, no, we'll get to that later on, but there's a lot of parallels, let's just say, to the role of Caesar and potentially the role of Donald Trump and whatever the fuck he's doing, okay? Now, I will say, I think Caesar had two brain cells to rub together, whereas Donald Trump, I don't think that might be the case. I would say I agree with my father and say that Donald Trump is more akin to the character of Zaphod Beeblebrox from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but, like, come on, I mean, Caesar literally is, like, he's the face, but he's also, like, passing legislation to aid his mates, who are also pulling the strings behind him. It's similar. Okay, let's read this historical significance paragraph about Caesar's consulship. While the agreement between Crassus, Pompey, and Caesar worked to achieve their aims, the overall opinion of the three men among the Romans was negative. The Roman people expressed disappointment in Pompey for taking part, because Pompey was so well loved. Pompey, as a result, felt the need to save his own reputation and began to distance himself from Caesar. Caesar had become a political criminal awaiting trial. Oh yeah, because he's consul and he's got his thing in Gaul right now. He has an imperium, which means his body is holy, he cannot be arrested. But as soon as he comes back to Rome, he will be a private citizen, meaning that he can be arrested and put on trial. So he's trying to avoid that at all costs. Caesar would eventually become a private citizen again, and that his trial was just a matter of time. Crassus knew that he no longer needed the agreement between the three men and he returned to his early animosity towards Pompey. He just did not fuck with that guy, okay? Alright, now we have to talk about Caesar in Gaul. Caesar in Gaul, basically, he conquers Gaul. He just does that, like, he does that extremely well. He makes propaganda, like, he just, like, does a bunch of stuff where he, like, kind of just conquers the entirety of Gaul, which is important, because you have to remember that Rome was sacked by the Gauls in some point in like the 300 BCE, but Rome was sacked by the Gauls and like all their history destroyed. Yeah. Caesar basically conquers Gaul, and the Roman people are like, okay, but he conquered Gaul, but then the Roman Senate still hate him because he's literally like the most powerful guy. Crassus and Pompey are fighting, the girls are fighting, and they have a conference in Lucca where Caesar basically goes in between them and goes, guys, look at me. Come on. This isn't you. Stop fighting. And they decide to stop fighting for like another 5 years, and then they start fighting again, except Crassus, I believe, dies. Crassus dies. He dies in Asia, and Pompey's wife Julia, who's Julius Caesar's daughter, also dies, so that connection is lost, and the third triumvirate is officially over, and civil war is encroaching because obviously both Caesar and Pompey are now incredibly powerful military generals because Caesar's been doing all the shit in Gaul. He also went into Britannia and conquered a bit of Britannia, which was crazy because like no one else would like do that for the next like century or shit because they just couldn't be asked going back. Anyway, civil war happens, okay? Civil war, the girls are fighting. The girls fight, and basically what you need to know about this is Caesar crosses the Rubicon, taking inspo from maybe Sulla, but using the armies given to him by Gaius Marius and his populist strength from the Gracchi brothers, lest we forget. He crosses the Rubicon, civil war happens. There's a really good quote from Beard here, which I had memorized because I listened to it in the audiobook of SPQR, and I really liked it, which was civil war was not Rome's choice between liberty and tyranny, it was Rome's choice of two emperors. So this, like, I fear the Roman Republic is gone at this point. It just hasn't been said. No one's said it yet. No one's been like, oh yeah, the Roman Republic's done. Like, no one said that, but it is done. Yep, invades Italy. Basically, Pompey ends up dying. Yep, Pompey dies. Bunch of battles. I'm not going over the battles right now. I'm going over the key figures. But Pompey dies. And Caesar returns to Rome victorious, and he becomes dictator. He becomes a dictator. Specifically, dictator in perpetuum. I'm going to give you 2 guesses to see what that means. If either one of your guesses was dictator forever, you win 10 points. Now, let's read the historical significance paragraph on the Civil War. Pompeian troops continued to fight against Caesar for 3 years after Pompey's death. Indicates that the Civil War was not really about individual personalities now. That goes against my contention. But I would say it was still caused by individual personalities, and that's on period, because I think that this sort of gang violence was caused by the separation of the Roman people into the Populares and Optimates faction, and then also the faith in a specific general, which I do think, still think it's caused by key individuals. I fear, like, yeah, whatever. And this is a really bad time for Rome, by the way. Civil war got so bad that they just didn't even have a consulship in 46 BCE. It was crazy. Okay, whatever. Caesar becomes dictator, all right? What do we know about Caesar's dictatorship, okay? He was a guy. He did a calendar. He did a bunch of building. He moved all the poor people away. Put them somewhere else. Don't want to look at them, am I right, guys? Yeah, he gave a bunch of land to the veterans. What else did he do? Oh, he effectively just made himself king, I fear. You know that iconic laurel leaf crown? He also had like a special chair, like a throne, but don't call it a throne, guys, it's not a king. And he also had a temple with priests. And his face was on the coins. Okay, cool. Anyway, he was given dictator in perpetuum in 44 BCE. Was he? Oh yeah, he was. That very same year. You guys know what happened? The Ides of March. Anyone know what the Ides of March are? The political assassination of Caesar, okay? He was assassinated by a bunch of conspirators because one thing Rome doesn't like, it's a king. Now, do you guys remember what name I said at the start to remember? Lucius Junius Brutus, who assassinated Tarquinius Superbus in 509 BCE, the last Roman king. Who was a key conspirator in Caesar's assassination? Marcus Junius Brutus. So he was descended of the man who assassinated the last Roman king. So it was almost like obviously divine that he would be one of the people to assassinate Caesar. Basically, Caesar's assassination happens on the Ides of March in 44 BCE because people are like, no kings, no kings, no kings. And the people of Rome don't really know what to do until Caesar's funeral and Caesar's will and testament being read out. But let's discuss Caesar's life first. I'm gonna read the story first. Caesar expanded the size of the Roman Republic. He was the first Roman commander to invade Britain. This was such a momentous task that it would be a century before another commander, Emperor Claudius, would be able to do the same thing. For example, the example of sole leadership and dedicated political reform of the Senate set the stage for the Roman Empire, which replaced the Roman Republic during the life of Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, also known as Augustus. Caesar's example was so profound that all of the Roman emperors would refer themselves as Caesar for thousands of years after Caesar's era. His name will be used in various cultures to designate kingship seen by the Germans, the Kaisers, and the Russian Tsars, which is crazy because I'm sorry, but Donald Trump gets compared to Caesar, which I don't agree in. But notice what all of these little fucking governments have in common. Fascism. Fascists love Rome. Say it with me, guys, okay? They all want to be Caesar. So now we're gonna end on the importance of Caesar's will and testament. And I might get into the second triumvirate in a different video because this was going on for a while. There's a lot of content here. But basically, Caesar's will gets read out by, first of all, Caesar's funeral happens. And Mark Antony, who I fully believe was in a very homosexual relationship with Caesar, that is my headcanon. Do not shame me. I'm allowed to have historical interpretations. Did he get with Cleopatra because she was the closest thing to Caesar after he died? We can discuss this. Whatever. Caesar is dead. His funeral. Mark Antony gives a very beautiful speech where he basically says, like, you know, he would have never done this to you guys, because Caesar famously, like, pardoned all the people who were, like, against him in the Civil War. and he displays his body with all of the wounds marked out in wax. So it was a very gruesome thing for the Roman public to see. And then they read out his will, where first thing he does is he declares his nephew Octavian as his adopted son and heir. He places Mark Antony and I believe Decimus Brutus as who was a conspirator against him. So Mark Antony did conspire against Caesar, Decimus Brutus did, as secondary heirs. So that obviously outraged the Roman public, because the Roman public's like, oh my god, he literally trusted you. You were his second heir, and you killed him. And then he also gave all his land and like riches to the Roman public. So all the Roman public got like a section of Caesar's gold, and all his land became public gardens. So, well, to quote Tom Holland here, even in death, Caesar was a populist. And that is where we shall end it. The Roman public, they get pissed. They get so mad. The streets are going crazy, bitch. People are, we loved Caesar. You didn't love him during his reign, bitch. He just gave you money. Fucking hell. He did know how to sway him, though. Not gonna lie. I'm tired, and I think I'm done. Hello, Edith in the future here. I realized I forgot to actually conclude the video essay with like a statement. So yeah, the fall of the Roman Republic was, in my opinion, and as my contention is, caused by key individuals, and the ambitions of key individuals to surpass each other in terms of powerfulness and iconicness. It was very much a thing of like, I mean, Caesar kind of did his big one. I fear that like no one's really kind of like topped Caesar's big one since then, because like he did go down as one of the most famous. But like, yeah, it was the actions of key individuals that led to the fall of the Roman Republic. And yeah, I guess at some point I'll continue on into the like second triumvirate, you know, Mark Antony, Octavian, Lepidus, whoever that guy is. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Cue the outro.